Hi, I'm Kenneth C. Davis, and I am the author of Don't Know Much About History and other books in the Don't Know Much About series, as well as other books about history. I try and make the stuff you thought was very boring back in high school a little bit more fun and interesting because it is very important. Slavery represented, as I said, it was political power because of the Three-Fifths Compromise and the fact that slaves gave the slave-holding states more power in Congress and more power in the presidential electoral system. It was also financial power. Slaves represented more worth than everything else in America put together. Enslaved people were extremely valuable property, and we hate to say those words today to think that people were property, but indeed they were. And of course, in a famous Supreme Court decision called the Dred Scott decision, the Chief Justice at the time, Justice Taney, compared slaves to having no more rights than a mule, essentially. And so we have to really put it into these stark, horrible human terms, that these people were considered worth no more than a piece of a farm animal. But they had extreme value in monetary terms. If you were a slaveholder, and by far there's no question that most people in the Confederacy, in the slaveholding states, about 25% of people held slaves. Very few people held more than 10 or 20 slaves. They were the 1% in the Confederacy at the time. So this is a really important idea that these people were struggling and fighting to the death. Not necessarily their death. It was going to be the death of a lot of young kids who didn't own slaves, of course. They were fighting to the death for power. And the power that they were fighting for was the power of the political power of slavery, the economic power of slavery, and the power to keep taking them further and further west into the new states that were being opened up. So you have Abraham Lincoln coming into the office saying, I have no problem with slavery where it exists today. I would like to see it end. I would like eventual emancipation. I would think we should compensate slave owners, which is what Great Britain had done. They'd freed the slaves but paid slave owners for their enslaved people. So that was Lincoln's fundamental policy. He didn't necessarily want blacks to stay in America either. This is something we don't like to talk about too much. His idea was something called colonization, which had been around for a very long time. People like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, founding fathers, the father of the Constitution, the author of the Declaration, they believed that America could not be a biracial society, that even if slavery ended, blacks would have to be returned to Africa. Of course, after several hundred years of enslavement, these were people who said, Africa, I've never been to, I'm not African. Even though we use that phrase today, African American, these people had been born in America. They were multiple generations born in America. So the idea that this was going to be a solution to the problem of a mixed race society was a fantasy. But Lincoln came into office believing that.